Today we have a pretty exciting guest, Peter, who introduced himself to me as an ex-startup guy who built his own agency, and these days he's kind of like working in consulting other people in building their agencies. So as always, a great speaker. Hi, Peter.
Hello, good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever, whatever it is, wherever you are. Howdy.
So yeah, today we have a pretty exciting topic on Toggl Academy. I feel like we've had a lot of different topics to do with profitability and building a business, but today we're taking a slightly different route, more about branding and either personal branding or like an agency branding. And that's you're selling as a marketer, you're first selling yourself, right? Or you're selling your team or you're selling your company. And if that's not up to standard, you're basically just going to drown in the sea of competition. And I think that is an important thing to keep in mind. You sell yourself first, and then you think about profitability and improving your operations. So great to have you here, Peter. I will give you the floor to introduce yourself, talk a little bit more about what you do, your background, where you come from, and then we will start with the slides. And as always, we will do a session of like 30 minutes where Peter is going to do his presentation. Oh, by the way, hi from the Netherlands. So by the way, guys, drop in where you're from. We're an international crowd, so lovely to see different flags and faces and names. As always, yeah. So 30 minutes, 30-ish minutes of a session from Peter. Then we will do some questions, Q&A, chat about what we just saw. Feel free again to drop questions throughout the session. We will try to get to them either in writing during the presentation, most likely after we're done. And at the end, as always, we're going to send hi from New York. Hi, guys. And again, so cool. I never did that. I never asked people to write where they're from. And at the end, as always, we're going to send out the recording to everybody who signed up. So I'm done chatting. Hi, Peter. Please tell us more about yourself. And then let's get cracking with the presentation.
Great. Well, so to know about me, I've lived different lives. I started life as a professional photographer in San Francisco, working for magazines and advertising agencies. I had clients like Mondavi, so it was very nice. It was a lot of fun, I thought. So I moved to New York to try to decide if I wanted to do that for a living. By the way, I am a New Yorker, so I went from New York to San Francisco, back to New York. And I decided to intern, I guess, or assist some famous photographers. One was Richard Avedon, quite famous. I was watching what was going on in the photo scene, and I just did not want to sell my creativity for money. So I put my photography on the side, and I entered the advertising world as an account manager. And I chose that rather than a creative job because, again, I just really didn't want to combine my creative skills with business. Interesting. I wound up doing that anyway because I thought I was a very creative, strategic account manager. So I was very lucky. I worked on General Mills and Northwest Airlines and Johnson & Johnson and other accounts. I was fortunate to have Saatchi & Saatchi, I worked for them, the world's largest agency, asked me to run business development in London. So I jumped on the plane with my family. We moved to London, and I spent a few years running biz dev across Europe, especially selling the London office. I then came back to New York to run business development. Unfortunately, the New York office was folding at that time. I saw what was coming, but what I really saw what was coming was the internet and digital marketing. I moved to a giant company to put newspapers online. And then later I launched interactive, intelligent bots. One was called Smarter Child, which got very, very famous. Radiohead was our first advertising customer. Well, actually, we used a tool for Radiohead. I then woke up and said, all right, this is not happening. It was the bust from about 2001. Moved to Oregon, moved everybody out to Oregon, bought an agency and grew it over the years. When I sold the agency, I became a consultant. People just asked me to help them with business development and agency management issues. I have been doing that for 10 years, and I live in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, the most beautiful town in Mexico.
Well, that's quite a lot of experience and quite a lot of travel under the belt. So I feel like we all just fit into this international crowd. And yeah, super excited to see what you have prepared for us today. So I'm gonna remove myself from the screen and let you be and put the presentation up, and let's get cracking. Super excited to hear what you have prepared for us.
Great.
Let's go.
I talk to my clients about being unignorable, and the way I couch it is basically say think of the opposite. The opposite of being unignorable is being ignorable, and that does not fit into a very positive business model. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about different ways to be unignorable and to be human. And this is another issue I've got. I see a lot of agencies just have no human face at all. They're just pure information on their website or sizzle reels, but I don't get to know the people in the agency, and I think that's a huge mistake. My thinking comes from two books that I've written. The one on the left, Buy This Book, Win More Pitches, is a book obviously about pitching that was pretty successful. It was published about 8 years ago. And a couple of months ago, I distilled everything I ever learned in advertising into how to build a kick-ass advertising agency. So a couple of books. I'll come back to books in a few minutes. To get to unignorable, frankly, humans win. The only thing that you own in your agency compared to the other agencies down the street is you. Now let's think of some yous. So we've got Ogilvy on the left, Morris and Charles Saatchi, who I had the interesting pleasure to work with in London, and that's David Droga on the right. Each of these people developed a personal brand for themselves and for their agencies. Okay, so this is not the case with as many agencies today, but there's an agency named Ogilvy, one Saatchi, and one Droga. But people are still branding their agencies. An example of superior personal branding, of course, is Gary Vee. And just to put this into perspective, he has 10 million followers on Instagram. I knew him hundreds of years ago when he managed his father's wine store, and Gary got famous because he was really, really good at social media and a YouTube channel about wine. So he took that and distilled it into becoming a marketer, and as you might expect, is rather successful these days. I didn't want to leave women out, and this is one for anyone who doesn't know who Mary Wells Lawrence was. Mary was the first woman in many areas of advertising business. She's worth looking up. She also was a superstar and was in magazines like Vogue. She really played it out. She knew what to do with her personal brand. So, is your agency unignorable? Put yourself in a CMO's shoes or the president of a company or any kind of client that you might want, and study their agency selection process. As a side note, I suggest that you all take a really hard look at the agency search consultants and how they think and how they talk about how they find agencies. I put up a very long list of agency consultants on my blog. I'll give you that URL at the end. So what's going on in the CMO land? They're overwhelmed, worried, and confused. In fact, there are fewer CMOs these days, and they last fewer years in their job, but they are very confused. So why confused? There are, pick your number, 4,000 marketing services agencies to choose from. And as you might suspect, that's everything from a mega IPG down to an individual. I always like to imagine the person living in Chiang Mai, Thailand, doing search engine optimization. Now, when I wrote my last book, I took a hard look at how many different kinds of agencies there are, because I wasn't even sure what to call an agency anymore. Is it still an advertising agency, marketing agency? Many names. And as you can see at the bottom, there is now the emerging style of agency, which is artificial intelligence agency, and they are coming. This is what the world of agencies looks like to the average client. I mean, it is just, try to imagine choosing an agency from a world that looks like this, because you could say this is what the world does in fact look like. So how to stand out? It's not by being indistinctive. My first book on pitching had a bunch of cartoons. This is one of them, and this is the cartoon that we use to illustrate the point that agencies look and act alike. And in this case, you can see the agencies are Smithson, Peterman, and Goodsky, but on the end, it's Goodson, Smithman, and Petersky. So to the average client, we all can look alike. We can start to look like commodities. And the way we talk about ourselves is critical to create distinction. Okay, paths to unignorability. Clearly, positioning is a critical issue, and I'm sure everyone that you read and talk to about business development starts here. What is your positioning? Well, it's the same game. Again, I can call them full service, integrated, mobile, social, branding, data savvy, idea people, media neutral, client focused, marketing partner, big agency experience, senior people on your account. This goes for the sort of smaller to mid-size agency that touts the fact, like I did once upon a time, that I worked at the world's largest agency, but now you got me. Clients love the expert. Now, the fear of being an expert that I hear from well, I shouldn't say all, many of my agency clients is that we might lose the opportunity to pitch tons of clients. My bottom line is don't pitch tons of clients. Pitch the ones that you think and that they think will become a perfect match. And the best way to do that is to develop expertise and sell it in. Many years ago, I met the gentleman that ran Fetch, and he told me when I asked him, "What does your agency do?" He said, "We're the mobile experts." That was their positioning. This is approximately, I don't know, let's say 5, 6 years ago. The good news is Fetch was a mobile expert. The clients understood they were a mobile expert, and Fetch was eventually bought. So if you have an agency that would like to be bought, being an expert in something is a good idea. All right, here's a problem. Website, your website. You've got 8 seconds to capture the attention of a visitor. That might be, I might be being light on that. I mean, sometimes I go to a website, I spend 3 seconds. So the first thing you have to do on your website is tell me why you are special and for my company fast. Some words that tell me what you do and why I should continue to pay attention. And then at the bottom, I say look and sound different, which is so obvious is mind-blowing sometimes. Okay, let me give an example. A few years ago, there were they're still there, 2 agencies in San Francisco, Argonaut and Barrett. And I just really almost couldn't believe that both of them in San Francisco were using San Francisco imagery to sell their agency. I just thought there had to be something that they could do that was different. This is the YouTube-based, we'll call it website for Boone Oakley. It's older now, but I use it as an example of one of the best uses of a different style of media, a different platform to sell in the agency. I suggest you go to YouTube and look up Boone Oakley. As you can see, they have a close to 1.5 million views. This is rare, as you can imagine, for a YouTube channel on YouTube. So take a look at this because it's quite intriguing. Unfortunately, I don't know why this is what their current website looks like. So they still have this up, but they went from something very unique, very, very unique to disruption is in our DNA. Well, disruption, slightly overused term these days. All right, here's a big one. Most websites, most marketing agencies do not use video to sell themselves to future clients. Tiny Hunter was a client of mine a long time ago. They're in Australia. We talked about how to make them look and sound different. And they're just too attractive and too articulate to have not been on the website. So today, Tiny Hunter has a lot of video on their website and on YouTube. And there's now another partner, and they're the stars of the video, and they create the personality for the brand. And they tell me that they win business because they lead with video that helps the visitor to the website understand who they are and like them. This is very, very important. They're very likable. Here's another agency, John Street from Canada, talks about being unignorable as their main business proposition. In a commoditized world, unignorable brands win. Well, frankly, this same sentence works for brands as well as agencies. So it's a side note. They created a video called Catvertising. It has 2.5 million views on YouTube. I don't think there's anything that an ad agency does on YouTube that's ever had that number. And they have close to 53,000 YouTube followers. I suggest you look at their work. They told me that the agency was bought because they made themselves famous by being very, very unique. Awards are personal. Clients need third-party here we go. Clients need third-party endorsements. It's as simple as that. I mean, it's really, really difficult to choose anything. We do that with restaurants. We ask our friends what movies to see. Clients do the same thing. They ask their friends and family. And importantly, they look at awards. Awards equal proof. I suggest that you have an award plan. Again, I've written about this extensively, plus a list of awards on my blog. I love awards. So Supernatural, which just won Small Agency of the Year, is pretty smart. They're writing the blueprint, which means they're thinking about the future for creative agencies that use AI. They are on the forefront of the most important subject on the minds of agencies today and on the minds of clients, and they're going for it. They're doing something different. They're trying to be unignorable. Many years ago, back in 97, I read an article. It was a magazine article called The Brand Called You, and it was written by Tom Peters, who, if you don't know him, you should check him out. And the bottom line is that each of us is a brand. I think we all know that now. It wasn't in the vernacular at that point in 97, but it sure is now. We all know about personal branding. And personal branding does work. In fact, personal branding as an individual can, in fact, beat a mega agency. So Ann Handley talks about writing. She's really good. She's a marketer. She has 455,000 followers on LinkedIn. McCann, New York, we're going to think a couple hundred people at least, only has 96,000. So this is a function of two things. McCann doesn't really appear to be pushing this as hard as Ann. LinkedIn does help run Ann's business, and Ann is kicking McCann's butt. So one person can kick the butt of a big agency if they do social media correctly and work it to build their brand. All right, so getting to you, how do you involve yourself in your agency? It's important to put a face on the agency. I can tell you, having looked at hundreds of agency websites, that at least half could have their logos interchanged with another one because there's just little personality, little uniqueness to that website. It's important on your website to look like an expert. Attitude works. It's okay to have some attitude. I rarely, if ever, see humor on a website. I once wanted to lead my agency's website with a stand-up comedian. I don't know why we didn't do that. It's maybe one idea too far, but it gives you an example of, excuse me, how do you generate interest? And be opinionated. I mean, just don't be bland. Tell it like it is. I think, again, back to Gary Vee, I think he does that. Be opinionated. Have an opinion. So here are 6 U Inc. platforms: thought leadership, personal video, branding by the book, podcasting, and talk. Thought leadership, whatever you call it, is absolutely critical in today's environment. And how do you do that? It can be a white paper, it can be a video, it can be a 20-second TikTok film, it can be a newspaper that you develop and send directly to a client. There are lots of vehicles, but they all have to deliver ahas. Aha, big deal, right? And the way you get there is by addressing client needs. You are not writing for yourself. You are writing for the client. What is on the mind of the client? What is worrying them? What is confusing them, as I said earlier? Also, leverage reach and frequency. Understand whatever platform you use that you need to use it to reach as many people as possible, and you have to maintain frequency. This is like old-fashioned media planning, reach and frequency. And finally, in order to not drive yourself insane, utilize KISS management, and that is keep it simple, stupid. You cannot do everything all at once. So roll programs out. If they work, keep them. If they don't work, get rid of them and roll on the next idea. Okay, let's a couple of thoughts on thought leadership that was impossible to ignore. Scott Galloway is now famous. He's got a couple of podcasts. 10 years ago or more, he had a company called L2, and they produce studies. So here's an example. They did a study about the consumer electronics industry. This was read by the consumer electronics industry. When I first found L2, they compared the social media work across luxury brands. And to make it very simple, there was no way that Fendi could not read an article about another famous luxury brand. I mean, they're all over each other in terms of what are they doing. So you can imagine how important this study was to individual categories. And it was produced by a marketing firm. There is absolutely no reason that an advertising agency couldn't produce its own study. In fact, I stole this idea of doing a study for healthcare and compared healthcare companies, and we won 2 big pieces of healthcare because we got the interest of the client by meeting a need and a fear that they had, a fear that they might lose to the competition. Another thing to do if you want to get attention is to be current. Follow the news and deal with what people are thinking about. Superhuman is a fantastic tool to see what's going on in AI. And they are pushing this out in newsletters and on LinkedIn. But they are capturing the attention of people interested in artificial intelligence. Okay, here's another one. Personal video. I mentioned it earlier when I talked about Tiny Hunter. Please don't yell at me. You are a human. And what we know, talking to search consultants and agency pitch consultants and clients and agency business development people, that often interpersonal chemistry is the determining factor in who gets chosen. You've got agency A, B, and C in a pitch. They're all pretty good. They all do their work. They all have big clients. They all look and sound alike. The part that they have that doesn't look and sound alike is who they are as human beings. And that can generate, if done well, interpersonal chemistry. It's a sales tool. Think of dating. Interpersonal chemistry works on a date, and it works on a sales call. Now, some people are afraid of video. I had a conversation with a client last week, and he said, I just don't know. I don't feel good about it. I'm not sure if I'm photogenic. What should I do? Well, I'll show you an example of how you can have a personality without having you in the actual video. A couple of years ago, I used Cameo, which is a tool that an online tool where you can rent people to deliver a sales pitch. Much of Cameo is comprised of famous actor types who will deliver a pitch for you. But what I did was I found a couple of impersonators. So on the left is Mahatma Gandhi, and on the right, Borat. And they talked about my business. So I got video on my website, but it wasn't me. The funny thing about the Borat video is that I had people call me up and ask me, how did you get Borat to speak for you, to deliver a sales pitch? And I said, well, I'm just a very friendly guy. Book branding. I've written 2 books. And the advantage of writing a book is that you're perceived as an expert. Experts write books to deliver proof. I like this word, proof that you're smart and that you're ahead of the curve. It generates awareness because when you write a book, you have a marketing plan behind it to get the words out, and it delivers marketing power. This is a brand new book just written by an ex-client, Priscilla McKinney. I would say an interesting book. I read it on an airplane last week. So collaboration is the new competition. Why did she write the book? Because she wants to be famous and make more money. Now, here's a double. Go talk at conferences, and I'm not saying go talk at advertising conferences. I'm saying go talk at the conference of the category of the clients that you want. Figure out what you might have to say to a healthcare marketing universe. Pitch it to the conference. They need people to talk, by the way, so they want you if you've got the right stuff. Now, combining two things. When I wrote my book about pitching a few years ago, Inbound, this is HubSpot, asked me to come talk about how to write a book. I have that presentation. If anyone's interested, let me know. Agencies obviously are particularly well suited to writing books because they've got copywriters, they've got art directors, and so forth. So anyway, I was asked to speak at the largest marketing conference because I wrote a book. Podcasting. Now, side note, I've been podcasting since about 2006. My agency ran a podcast for a while, stopped. During COVID, I ran my own podcast. I needed something to do while I was stuck in the house. I did 40 interviews with people. But the bottom line is, I suggest that people be the guest first. Now, why be a guest? You're a guest because you borrow the audience of the podcasting host. We'll call it a podcast right now. I'm borrowing the audience of the company running this, right? So why be a guest? 321,000 business podcasts. Podcasts are about marketing, skill sets, as in it might be an SEO podcast, advertising, and business categories. You can do it. After writing this last book, I'm probably lined up to be on 20 plus podcasts. One way I do that is to have a guest plan, have a BA guest plan. I think that makes sense, which means you need certain elements to help somebody want to have you be a guest. You need to prove your expertise. You need to tell them that you know how to market the podcast once it's done. There are a few things. If you want to learn more about that, give me a shout. I'll send you a couple of documents. Here's an example of me on a podcast. I don't know why I needed to show this, but as you can see, now here's an interesting thing. This podcast, in this one, I talked about the art and science of account management. That is not the only subject that I talk about. In fact, the new book I have has 13 plus chapters on different subjects relating to how to build a profitable advertising agency. But I can talk about any one of these, so I can slice and dice different subject areas for different podcasters. All right, now we're at the bottom line. Work at being unignorable. And that really means look at what you're doing, look at your outbound marketing, your inbound marketing, your website, your all the different kinds of decks you have, how you respond to RFPs, how you act in a pitch, and decide that you need to stand out and be unignorable. You want to be smarter than the next guy, different, groovier, right? Because there are 399,000 other marketing agencies that people can choose from. So my point here is be unignorable. Think about how important you are to the proposition, you as a human being. Think about how you present yourself online and on all of the different kinds of platforms we have. Use video, please, because very, very few agencies use video other than for the sizzle reel, which frankly, I'm getting tired of. That's it, folks. Thanks for your time. I am Peter at peterlevitan.com, and my books are on Amazon. I'd love it if you bought them. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Peter. Actually, let me put us back up a bit for a minute if people want to take it down. Great stuff, great presentation. And we already have some questions coming in, but I'm going to be a selfish host and I'm going to start with my question because I'm interested. And something that kind of kept mentioning is being different, right? And I feel like we're talking about an industry of different in general, right? The whole point of industry is being different. So how do you do different where everybody's trying to do different?
Yeah, I don't believe that everybody's trying to do different. I mean, once upon a time when I started, I'll combine me being different with the world not being different. 10 years ago, I created a Pinterest site. And this was when I was really gung ho and wanting to build my brand as a consultant. I built a Pinterest site and I covered maybe 10 to 12 cities. And I plucked out the visuals for 10 to 12 agencies in each city. And it became a form of agency directory, right? It was just a very good system. I had somebody in the Philippines produce it for me. It was relatively low cost. It's an example of my use of thought leadership. So I two things. One, I was different because I had a Pinterest website about advertising agencies. Nobody had that. But what I noticed by looking at 100+ agency websites was that most of them are not trying to look and sound different. I mean, again, the worst thing we can do with brands is to take brand A and put brand A on brand B's website and start to realize that it's all interchangeable. So I think agencies have to think about kicking ass a little bit if they want to immediately look and sound different.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the audience questions. And if you guys have any more topics, questions, ideas, anything you want us to chat about a little bit more, just drop it in the comments and we will get to it. And now let's go. Let's see. I don't want to butcher your name. Sudarshan is asking. Let me put it up on the screen. Here we go. So according to you, what is it that differentiates TBWA, Saatchi and Saatchi, and Ogilvy, or perhaps the one single USP from them that stands out to you in present times? So could you discuss that a little bit?
Well, I'm not, when I really look at it, and I want to be careful here, I worked at Saatchi and Saatchi for 16 years, but I left when Morris and Charles left in the 90s. So the new Saatchi and Saatchi is a more bland, they're going to yell at me, a blander agency than it used to be. I have to tell you what differentiates TBW, Saatchi, and Ogilvy. I do not really see a difference between these. They're large agencies that tell their clients that they have many, many offices. They got a lot of people. They are about big and being able to handle big business. So the unfortunate answer is I don't see a great deal of distinction between these companies. If I was a client, I would need the help of a search consultant to help me sort of break these apart and understand how they're different on an individual basis. These are bland companies.
Yeah, but given sort of the scale and size and history of them, would you say that maybe they don't need this anymore? Maybe they don't need to differentiate themselves since they have all of this history and I don't know, legacy.
Well, they're pitching each other. So, and I lived in this world where I would go into a pitch and I'd put on this Saatchi map and say, we had 8 million offices all over the world, as if, maybe in those days it mattered. I can't imagine that any agency group can survive without wanting to look and feel different. Now, what I do know is within each of those groups, there are sub companies, if that's the best way to put it, that are more specialized and have things that they can talk about that are different and better. So I think when I see the master brand, I'm not sure I can tell you what the heck is the difference between these. But if I dug in, I'm sure that there are sub brands that are experts and are smart and maybe are good looking and do well in video.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to Martine's question, which is a little bit more about the podcasting. And they mentioned that they're very much interested in the podcast marketing tools. So if you could share or discuss that a little bit.
Well, here's what you're doing when you want to be on a podcast, and they are not contacting you. You are going outbound. Is you need to introduce yourself quickly, I am so and so, I do this, right? We're all dealing with a massive amount of incoming. And in a simple email, explain who you are and what you could talk about. I then attach a document, which is essentially, we'll call it a bio, but it's deeper than that. I have an advantage of being able to say I've been on over 100 podcasts. And sometimes you just got to say it. I have a microphone and I have a good camera. I have a dark room. I know how to look good. I am able to promote your podcast because podcasters want to know that on the back end that I can promote it, whether it's on my website, in my newsletters, on my LinkedIn page. So if you want, give me a shout. I'll share that second document with you.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to the next question by Joris from the Netherlands, as I remember. And the question is, as a general consultant, how to figure out what to put in your LinkedIn headline? How to introduce yourself?
Well, that's interesting. I change it up a little bit. I'd have to actually look at what it looks like right now. Frankly, I do change it. I think you need to be very clear and you need to be very bold. There's something else that I'm sort of surprised at when you talk about LinkedIn headline. You can put a video up where your picture is. I rarely see this. It kind of blows my mind. If you go to my LinkedIn page, you can see it. If you click on the picture on a LinkedIn profile on yours while you're in your site, it will ask you if you want to add a video, which is kind of crazy. Most people don't know this. The other thing you can do, there's a little speaker symbol next to it, and that was designed to allow people to be able to, what's the best way to say this? Say their name so that people understood how it was pronounced. Okay, but you can still use it to deliver a tiny sales message. So my suggestion is when you look at your profile, look at it in aggregate, and there are multiple elements. I just say be clear and be bold.
I love how you sort of like mentioned, like, being original and like these suggestions that you just gave about like, using the pronunciation field for like a little pitch. That's like pretty original. I've never heard of that before. So cool tip. Do we have, no, we just have some thank yous from the people. If we have any more questions, feel free to shoot them. And I have a couple more questions myself. So something you mentioned in the very beginning was to be human. Like, you kind of, you mentioned that you open a lot of these agency websites and there's not a single human to be seen. Are we talking about putting your full team there? Like, sort of like your corporate, like a team picture? Or are we talking about like the CEO, one face being blasted all over the place? How should we approach this whole like humanness thing? Should it be one face or should it just be the team?
Well, that's always a big question, right? Because some agencies will put their one or two principles up in a video, even on their page where they say, this is who we are. They'll only be senior management. Other agencies will have a lot of people. The question always comes down to, and I had this with my agencies, is how many people can you squeeze into either a video or a series of photographs? And the question is, do you show everybody? Do you show some people? Do you just show management? This is a very, very personal question. I think agencies have to answer themselves. Obviously, Gary Vee has hundreds of people working for him, but he's the star. He does bring other people into his Q&A kind of videos. So that's very personable. And the guy really presents himself. I'll go back to this word human. I'm not incredibly in love with everything he says, but I think he gets watched because of the way he sort of taps into his thinking and attitude. I think it's up to every agency to figure out who. Now, some agencies will actually film an agency party. I've seen that happen, and that can be pretty cool to show like these are fun people and they're nice and happy. I usually suggest to agencies, if they do show photographs, that there's some creativity involved or some similarities in terms of lighting and background. As a side note, in terms of being different, there was a fabulous agency in Seattle many years ago, crazy name, the Wexley School for Girls. That was the name of the agency. Let me repeat that. The Wexley School for Girls. And what they did on their people page was they just had photographs of 20 models. So when you went to their page, all you saw were beautiful people. Now, it was kind of obvious that they were models, but there was humor involved, and at least you got to look at good-looking people.
Well, that always sells, right?
Sometimes.
The magic trail. And kind of like, talking about humans, and you also mentioned it yourself that, we have this whole new industry of AI agencies coming up. Where does human fit in there? Like, if we're selling ourselves as like an AI agency, so should we still be blasting human faces?
Yes. I mean, you have you now have the choice of your face or an AI generated face. And I think there are very creative ways to use this. I'm about to use a tool. I unfortunately can't remember the name of it. I'm doing a series on the COVID lockdown. This will be a YouTube series of interviews with people around the world about the effect of the lockdown on their life. And it's called Aftermath. And one of the tools I just found, which is brilliant, is a tool that converts, like it would convert a video like you and I are doing right now, and it would allow us to be speaking in German, and it would move our mouths in such a way that it actually looked like we might be the speaking German. So hopefully that made sense. AI tool that takes an existing video, you tell it that you want Peter to be talking in Russian, and click, 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 I'm talking in Russian. So, man, AI, just be smart. I think find a couple, I actually even put these up on my resource page. Find a couple of good AI lists, list managers, and spend some time, but not the rest of your life, studying AI.
Cool. I think we will all have to do that basically because, what they say, AI won't replace the jobs, but people who know how to use AI will. So
I
we
agree
better get on it.
completely. Yes. We've seen that happen in the past with Photoshop and things like that.
That's true. Okay, so we do have more questions. So let me just get cracking to make sure we make it in time. Another question we have is how and where did you do networking when you were beginning your consultancy, or does the book that you wrote and the books that you write do the networking for you?
Well, I hit the ground running. The reason was I sold an agency. I knew a couple of things I wanted to do, in particular, get back to my photography. But I had other agencies ask me if I could help them with business development. I mean, they were what my skill sets were. But so I had some incoming just from the industry. But what I did, and I started 10 years ago, was I really hammered search engine optimization. Today, I probably have 850 blog posts. I'm on the front page of Google for many searches. That's how people generally find me. I have a LinkedIn newsletter. I have a newsletter for my website, my blog. I have not done a ton of outbound because I've been getting a lot of inbound. I will say that today it is more difficult to get that inbound, and I recommend to people if they really want to, be great at sales, that they have to figure out an outbound thought leadership generated program. But books work. These are books here. Where's my finger? Books are behind me, right? Books work. I send the books to some people who I want to get their attention. I talk about a lot of people in the book so I can then write them and say, you're in my book. Yeah, I would say books do a great deal of networking. And the bottom line is just write a good book. Don't write a
Well,
shitty book.
yeah, right. Like that makes sense. Like, content is king. What do they say in SEO, right? Like content is king, so you have to write it good, otherwise it won't work. Kind of
Now,
continuing on.
side note, just as a quick side note, I have 2 books, and the books are content that can be sliced and diced. So it works. It's a full 360 kind of program.
Absolutely. Okay, kind of continuing on this personal branding thing, we have a question by Jessie, and she's asking, when you're just starting out on your own, do you feel like using taglines like from corporate burnout to digital freedom could actually hurt you or may hinder your ability to land clients, even if it is your truth?
I think a good tagline works. We've sort of gotten away from taglines as the industry has moved into probably too much digital and not enough analog. If you can come up with a tagline that really makes a point about who you are and what you do, and it's short and sweet and memorable, I would say go for it. I mean, it's really good. The first agency I worked for years ago, which was a madman agency in New York, had a simple line: ambitious advertising. And when I was in business development situations, I looked at the client and I would say, "We want to be ambitious, right?" And sort of, so that was a good line for us because it in many ways qualified the client. Yeah, I think these things work. For Saatchi had "Nothing is impossible." So again, in a meeting, I could sit with a prospective client and say, "What's your problem? What's your opportunity? We can address that because for us, nothing is impossible." So yeah, I think taglines work.
I'm a believer in taglines as well. I feel like, if you repeat something enough times for like a long enough time, it will stick. So, people will start believing it.
Yeah.
Cool. One more question we have is, apart from being or trying to be different and picking a specialty as a subject matter expertise, would you also suggest only picking a niche of clients to work with? For example, clients that are only in InfoSec or etc.
Yeah, there are different ways to slice and dice what you view as an opportunity. So, yes, your positioning can be what describes the agency. And on another side, a positioning can say, we are an expert in a very specific category. I'll go back to that thing I did where I stole it from L2. We started doing a series of studies of the healthcare market, comparing how they were using social media. And we aimed that at the healthcare market, and we won business from the healthcare market. There are obviously agencies that just say they're healthcare marketers, or agencies that just say they do retail. The advantage there is the client immediately figures out, if you do it correctly, that you are in fact an expert in their category. Now, it's a kind of a funny thing that happens. I once had a client, a healthcare client, call me up and say, "We want you to handle our recruitment marketing." This was a 200,000 person hospital group. And I said, "Well, we haven't done any recruitment marketing." And then they said, no. We like that you haven't done it yet. We want to do it differently. So it kind of works both ways. But the bottom line is, picking a client category and hammering it, you can do it. One advantage, as a side note, is you can do it on the side. I mean, you can just do it with landing pages. You don't have to convert your entire website to that client category.
Cool. Sounds good. Thank you. And we have yet more questions coming in. So next up is by Dorothy, and she would like to know, how do you identify the right collaborators, contractors, etc., to align with both your personal and agency brands?
Well, sort of the humorous answer is you don't have to worry about who they are if they're in the background. That said, agencies share a mission. They spend a lot of time these days talking about their philosophy, their agency personality. And I think it's important not to work with people that will rub everyone the wrong way. Now, the bottom line is, the more people you have in your group, they're not always going to be aligned. So I would say, if you think of the group of people who meet with clients, there should be an alignment there. For the other people, I don't know if it's critical. It's not critical as long as they do a good job. That's the bottom line.
As long as the job is done. All right. So I don't know if we have any more questions. I'll give another minute for people to drop in like a last comment or so. And while we wait for that, let me just kind of remind everybody that we will send out the deck and the recording to people who signed up. And we also, the deck and the recording. And just stay in touch with with our socials. We always share any kind of upcoming Academy episodes there. We have a couple more aligned for this year. So we still have definitely very exciting topics that are hopefully relevant to all of you. And I don't see any more questions coming in. So hopefully we covered everything that you guys wanted to know. And if you do have any questions, I bet you can email Peter and he will be, or send him a DM on LinkedIn and he will be very happy to reply or like expand on anything he spoke about. Let's see if we have a question. I don't think it's a question, just kind of like a pat on the back for Peter. Yeah, it's basically a very good point that you made. Promote sell using an LP to different target industries. On point. Perhaps this would be perhaps this would help to identify which ones convert better, sell better, and trying to focus more on that niche. Yeah, and also thank you so much for participating. Honestly, like that makes our job so much easier, and it's just more exciting when we have all of you to talk to instead of just like having a chat between the two of us. So thank you so much for joining, and we hope to see you in the next episodes. And also, of course, big thank you and a round of applause for Peter. Great, it was great having you, and definitely great presentation. And thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience. We really appreciate it.